Dear ladies and gentlemen, for having me. I'm not an architect. I'm also not an urban planner. I work for a research organization. I'm an urban sociologist. I have a master's degree in environmental governance and a PhD in technology management. So I'm looking upon cities and urban processes from a couple of different perspectives. And I'm here today to share some reflections about an increasing utilization of data in our urban life and the increasing importance of data and what that does to our cities and to our urban spaces. Let me start with a couple of examples. I'll start a little bit technical. It will get less technical. I apologize for the translators, and I hope this is all right. But I think it makes it clear. It makes it clear for you what I try to bring you across. So this is the energy arena in Amsterdam. It's the stadium, the Ajax Stadium in Amsterdam. Has any one of you been to the Ajax Stadium in Amsterdam lately? No, not very many. None actually. Okay, so a stadium has a very interesting energy pattern, right? Every time when the football team plays, there's a large amount of energy that's being pulled from the grid because you know all the floodlights go on and there's all the appliances and the equipments that are on. So in that occasion, the stadium comes into what we call like a peak load of energy, and it's where energy becomes very expensive. So that means there is a business case for a stadium to invest in a battery storage system in order to shave that peak load and not depend on that very expensive energy. So that happened in the energy arena in Amsterdam. We thought, wait a minute, why don't we, out of this very technical project, make a sort of a social district engagement project? Why don't we talk to the building owners around the stadium who have empty space on their rooftops and ask them to open up their rooftops so that anyone who would like to invest could invest into photovoltaic solar cells. And then we would talk to the stadium manager and ask them whether they would invest in a slightly larger battery and share some of their battery storage space for those who invest into the solar systems on the rooftops, so that they can decide when they want to use the solar energy, if they want to use it for themselves when they need it, for example, to charge their electric car, or whether they want to sell it on the stock market when prices are highest. So that's why it's called the energy arena, right? Because basically now you have an integrated system of energy flows that depends and runs on data, and you work with the building owners around the stadium to get it running. Now this type of system, we will in the future see more of these types of systems in our cities. Why am I telling you it? Because you can use this type of system to maximize returns on investment for those who invest into the battery and the solar energy, or you can develop it and use it to provide safe, secure, clean, and affordable energy to the district dwellers around the stadium, which is Amsterdam's Zuidoost. It's not the fanciest part of the city, it's more like a socially deprived neighborhood. The algorithms behind it, they don't care, right? We've got the data, and usually we put our IT developers and the information workers then to design the algorithms, but the algorithms don't care. It's a political decision that we are taking. Here's another example from the city of Eindhoven, where we have worked to create a living lab in the city center. It's called Stratum. It is the zone where in summer all the students go at night, Friday night, to party. It's the bar zone in Eindhoven. And there have been quite some struggles because it's a quite narrow zone and it can get very crowded. So at night, sometimes you have 10, 15, 20,000 students hanging out in a small, narrow street. And that does cause conflict every once in a while, especially late at night when a lot of alcohol is in play. So the city decided, let's use that Stratum Street as a living laboratory to see what we can do with data in our cities. And we connected the streetlights with each other through data and connectivity. And we also, we put some sound sensors on the streetlights, sound sensors, like very good microphones. And you can train these sound sensors. The sound is just data, right? You can find patterns in the data. You can train them so that they detect specific type of noises automatically. So, a very typical thing to do is to detect gunshots, right? If you hear a gunshot, the system would automatically tell you, look, there's a gunshot somewhere in the city, and it could tell you where. Or you can train them to detect breaking of glass, right? If someone smashes a window, the system would detect it automatically. We trained it to detect aggression in the voice of people. So when sort of the aggression would rise and tensions would rise at night in the bar zone, the system would get an alarm, would give an alarm to the police, and the police would receive it on their smartphones, and they would be able to go to the place where the tensions were high, and they would go to de-escalate. It's another example how data increasingly, how we increasingly use data to, well, inform and change the way we live in cities. But also here, the algorithms don't care. But do we want to be listened to all the time by a microphone which is hanging there sometime and on a specific occasion gives an alarm? So it is also not a question of technology, it's a question of policies, of ethics, of integrity, which we need to deal with. And here's another example. In all of the many cities all over Europe, we've seen electric bike sharing schemes or non-electric bike sharing schemes come into being. And personally, I believe bike sharing is a terrific thing because it enables you to use the bike, to not use the car, to drive around in the city center when you need it, then you put it back again if you don't need it. I personally use bike sharing quite a lot because I travel a lot to cities. There has been originally the station-bound bike sharing system where you would have a station with bikes and you would pick one up and then you'd have to bring it to a different station somewhere in the city. Ultimately, we've seen a lot of these free-floating systems springing out of the ground and then going bankrupt. And basically what starts to happen is that these free-floating systems, they work based on a smartphone. They are very convenient because I just look up where's the next bike. Usually it's less than a 2-minute walk. I go, I pick it up, I ride where I want to, and I leave it. But of course this has some side effects on the urban fabric, on the urban space, right? Because people tend to, well, behave in a human way or sometimes in a less human, and you find these bikes everywhere. Right? They get thrown into the rivers, you find them piled up anywhere, and eventually they even sort of jeopardize the original idea of a better utilization of the urban space because they actually block the roads. So here again, we are using data to help citizens move around in the cities and make actually a better and more efficient use of the public space. We reduce, for example, the need for parking lots or for cars in the city. But at the same end, the algorithms behind it, they just follow our behavior and they tend to produce something like this. So the point I'm trying to make is that there seems to be something about value when it comes to dealing with data entities. Value in the sense of the urban value that we can create from the data. It allows us to actually create a tremendous value. We can be way more efficient. We can use way more renewable energy and become much cleaner and have a more functional city. But also the values that drive our decisions around data usage. And these are things that we're just emerging to understand. We're just starting to understand that data and the way how we use data has a tremendous impact on our cities. I will give you one more example. For example, I'm using an app which is called My Taxi. Anyone here, has anyone here used My Taxi? Yes, okay. So it's basically a simple app. You can look up, you just tell where you are, and then the taxi comes and picks you up and brings you where you want to go. Very simple. But there is an algorithm in the app that helps the platform earn money. And that algorithm is structured in a way that the taxi driver gets more rides if he provides a higher share of his income to the platform provider. That means if he provides 25% of the taxi fee to the platform provider, he gets all the rides that he can get. And if he only provides 10%, he gets maybe only, every third or fourth potential ride. So that increases the value and the money for the platform provider. But what does it do to our cities? It leads to a situation where I'm here, there's the taxi, I call the taxi, but I don't get that one. I get one which is 5 kilometers away to drive specifically to me because he has a different share that he gives to the platform. So by having this very small tweak on the platform in the digital system, we double or triple the trips of taxi drivers in our cities with all the consequences which this has on infrastructure, on air quality, and on congestion. And we are not used to thinking in that way, that digital systems have a huge physical impact in our city, and I want to sensitize you for that. We have difficulties to understand this because we don't really grasp the value of the data. We have challenges to grasp the value of the data. And speaking with Oscar Wilde, we know the price of everything but the value of nothing. So we have difficulties to understand what value sits in what type of data sets and how can we use it to improve our urban system, to improve our cities, make them more livable, more sustainable. And that has to do with a specific threat of the data economy. The data economy is very different from all the other economies. And the key difference in it is that it does not have any marginal costs. Marginal costs, very simple concept. Whatever I produce, any physical item I produce, has marginal costs. If I want to produce more of it, I need more resources. I need eventually some more equipment. I need a factory, maybe 2 factories, maybe 10, to produce more of it. And therefore, costs rise. It's the other way around with digital systems. If I have a digital service, and the digital service usually runs on public infrastructures, on the personal commodities, on our smartphones, and it runs on user-generated data and with an automated algorithm on top of it. Now, if I provide that digital service to citizens or whoever, it doesn't matter if I provide it to 100, to 100,000, or to 100 million. The costs at the end, they stay pretty much the same. So we have 0 marginal costs for digital systems. And that makes it so difficult for us to understand the value, the economic, but also the urban value that we generate through digital systems in our cities. Let me make you I'll come to that. So basically, what we have to think about is what we do with these digital systems. We create personal value, right, for citizens who can save time, who can maybe have lower costs, who have maybe better health. There is a private value, of course, because it's corporations that provide these digital services and they want to make money with it. But then there's also public value that needs to be attached to it in forms of environmental quality, in forms of taxes being paid, in forms of jobs generated, or in forms of what we just heard before, the quality of the urban fabric. Now let's look at an example of the example of Uber. Who of you knows Uber? Okay, all of you know Uber, very good, I don't have to explain it. So Uber, by making use of this platform economy, of this 0 marginal costs, Uber is the largest taxi driver company in the world, having a market capitalization of 5 to 6 billion US dollar and only employing 40 people, right? So how can that happen? That's this exponential platform logic, and we always grapple with that concept. So how does Uber refer to these different type of values? So if we use Uber as an individual, as a personal value, what it generates for us is 20 to 50% cost saving against a taxi. It's 20 to 50% cheaper to use an Uber than to use a taxi, a normal taxi. And of course, it generates a tremendous private value, a private return on invest. So there was a $2.5 billion valorization in 2018 for Uber. But what's the public value? What's the public value in our cities from Uber? Well, you could say there is maybe some local jobs that are being created for the drivers. I've been to Chicago this summer. In Chicago, it's a city of 2.3, 2.4 million inhabitants. There's 70,000 Uber drivers driving around in Chicago, and all of them barely surviving. But what about the local taxes paid already, right? Uber has this double Dutch tax system where it avoids all the taxes it can avoid, and it's basically paying no taxes. And what about the jobs of the taxi drivers lost? What about the cost on the infrastructure? What about the cost on the environment? And all these are things that, of course, Uber does not account for. So the message is we have to be very clear about this entire complex value chain before inviting a company like Uber or any digital system to operate in our cities. And we tend to not do this. We tend to neglect it. So what we came up with is a very, very simple formula, which we call the value of urban data, which basically is the positive impact of a data-driven solution minus the negative impact minus the costs for data. And data has some costs. There has been quite some policies in the past promoting open data. And since a couple of years, we're seeing that this might not be the right way to go, but I'm not going into that field now. But let's take a look about on this cost thing of the data. Don't worry, you don't have to understand all that. But if we want to only run a station-bound bike sharing system and improve it, it means that we have a lot of different data agents, a lot of different stakeholders from where we get data, from where we need high-quality data in a reliable way every day in real time, and where we need to which we need to merge and create and put intelligence on top of it. So there is a lot of different sources of data and a lot of interaction necessary to run a station-bound e-bike sharing system in a city. It's not just the bike operator. You need weather data. You need the user data. You need some prediction models. You need the traffic data in order to understand where to put the bike, the bike stations, etc., etc. So that means to actually help a city harness that value and manage or govern a digital urban economy, we need an entire system, right? Where we have the data providers, where we have the data transmitters, where we have the data operators, like these different levels. And that means there's a new role here for municipalities and for cities, and often also for utility companies that are setting up this system. Okay, I won't go too much into detail here. I think I'm happy to provide you with the slides if you approach me later. Why am I telling you this? The e-bike system is just one example for a lot of digitally data-driven, we call it solutions, that we have been piloting all over Europe throughout the last 6, 7, 8 years, a lot of them with funding from the European Commission. Wherever you look, there is this potential to go into more sustainable, more like cleaner, more efficient urban systems, be it electric buses, be it new type of electric vehicles and charging systems, be it a more intelligent traffic management system. This picture shows you the potential of standardization and also the scale advantage of these solutions. And it's supposed to show you that there's a lot of these solutions already being piloted and demonstrated that have a tremendous impact on our cities. But we have a blind spot because all of those systems depend on data. And we have a blind spot because we have not yet developed the system to connect the the daisy chain of urban data. That means we have, let's say, you could say a lake of data available in all our cities, in Geneva, in Paris and London, everywhere. And this data comes from many, many different devices. It comes from your personal devices. If you have installed Google Maps, you already you provide quite some data. It's commercial data, right? For example, from entities like MasterCard. Oh, I have to speed up, okay. Etc. So you have all these different types of data from these different stakeholders, and you need to aggregate them to provide a value for your city. But how can we make sure that we actually create a specific urban value that is relevant for the public and not specifically for the investor? How can we make sure then that nonetheless companies that have relevant data share this data with the city, because the city needs the data to understand the functions. So therefore, there is something emerging that I call a new discipline, and that's my last slide, which is what I call urban data governance. And that is something that I believe our city increasingly will have to take care of. It's about decision-making about data-related issues that impact these questions of common good, business value, and civil rights. It's value and policy-driven, and it lies beyond the mere management of data, which is what's happening today. And the core challenge here for the municipalities, for the cities, is to govern the data in the best interest of citizens and the public good without jeopardizing the potential business opportunities from these data sets. So that's a fundamentally new form of public-private partnerships around data in our cities, which we are seeing emerge. And basically we at Fraunhofer have created a new research topic, a new field of research out of this, and I invite you to stay with me, have a look on our website, collaborate with us, because we are just at the beginning of shaping this new field. Thank you very much for your attention.